Hi, and welcome to the Northwest Surrogacy Center Meet a Surrogate webinar. I'm Carla, and I'm a case manager at NWSC.
Hi, I'm Mariah, and I am a case manager and a surrogate coordinator here at NWSC.
First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. We were founded in 1994, and we are the largest surrogacy agency in the Pacific Northwest. We work with intended families from the US and all over the world. In fact, last year we were working with over 26 countries.
And in terms of surrogates, we currently work with women in Oregon, California, and in Colorado. We are broadcasting today from our office here in beautiful San Francisco, right next to the ballpark downtown. And we also have offices in Portland, Oregon, and in Denver, Colorado.
In fact, I work out of the Portland office, and Mariah works out of the San Francisco office. We've invited two women to take part in the webinar today to talk about their experiences as surrogates with Northwest Surrogacy Center. First, we have Jen. She just delivered a baby a couple months ago for an intended family. She's actually in the office with us today. And we also have Sami, who is live Zooming from Sacramento. Sami delivered a baby in September of 2016 for a family, and she's back for a second surrogacy with a new family, and she just confirmed her pregnancy recently. So the two ladies are going to talk about their experiences as surrogates, and then they're going to answer your questions a little bit later on. But feel free to type in your questions at any time during at the little Q&A link on the Zoom.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we will go ahead and hand it over to Sami and Jen.
Hi, my name is Jen, and Sami, why did you want to become a surrogate?
I wanted to become a surrogate because I had two people very close close to me nearly enlist the help of a surrogate. My brother, when he came out as a gay male, I knew that he had always talked about having a family of his own. So I knew that in the near future, when he was ready to settle down and start a family of his own, that he would need to enlist the help of a surrogate. And then a childhood friend of mine, her and her husband struggled with infertility. They had 3 failed IVF attempts and ended up a couple months later getting pregnant on their own naturally. But they were, again, very close to enlisting the help of a surrogate. So it got me thinking about my own pregnancies and how wonderful and almost easy they were. And so I knew that that was something that if I could help another family who was struggling, that it was kind of a no-brainer. So that's why I became a surrogate. What about you, Jen?
I decided to be a surrogate when one of my friends became a surrogate, and she blogged all about it, her whole experience from the shots all the way through to the delivery. And it give me thinking about, wow, yeah, my pregnancies for my own were relatively easy. And how great would that be to be able to give a life to a family who really wanted it? So that's when I started considering, wow, yeah, let's do this. So that's why I wanted to become a surrogate. So Sami, how can you describe your conversation that you had with your family and your husband or your partner?
Yes. Yes. So with my husband, it was very easy. He knew I loved being pregnant. And so that he's very supportive. So that conversation, um, he just needed some more clarification on exactly what a gestational surrogate was. And with a little bit of education and help from the case managers at NWSC, we were able to fully comprehend what it meant to be a gestational carrier. And so he was completely supportive after he learned the ins and outs of it. I was most nervous, though, to tell my daughter, who is now 7.5, because I was just scared that she wouldn't understand, that she would have all these questions that I would try to answer, but she wouldn't comprehend. And in the long run, looking back, it was so easy. Once I explained that, mommy's going to help a family have a baby of their own, she thought it was the coolest thing. And then with my family, my parents in particular, they were just more concerned about my well-being and that I was going to go through this pregnancy and that it was going to be safe and I was going to be healthy. So after we once again talked with the fertility clinic and they got the education that they needed, they were extremely, extremely supportive. So all around, it was more nerve-wracking for me, but when it actually came down to having the conversations, everyone was so excited and supportive. And that's all that I needed. How did that conversation go with you?
It went well. I actually filled out the questionnaire intake the night, late one night, and then told my husband the next day that I had done this and that I really wanted to be a surrogate. And he was like, "Whoa, what?" Anyway, so that started the conversation going. And he had lots of questions, and some I could answer, and some I had to rely on Northwest Surrogacy to answer. But after several weeks, months of those conversations, then he became confident that my well-being was going to be okay, and that this was an okay thing, because he knew how my pregnancies went before, so he was supportive of that. My family, they had a lot of questions too, and mostly for my well-being as well. But when I was able to explain, then they were okay with me doing this. I mean, I was also a Peace Corps volunteer living in Africa for 2 years, and so that conversation was similar to this conversation. So, but anyway, how did your screening process go?
The screening process, it seemed to take forever, but then in looking back, it went by so quickly. Very thorough. There was a home visit, a psych evaluation that both my husband and I had to take in the Bay Area. And then also in the very beginning was meeting with Northwest Surrogacy Center, so that they could interview me and make sure that I was going to be a good candidate to be a surrogate. So like I said, when I was in the middle of it, it seemed to take so long because I was so anxious. In reality, it went by super quick. So I don't know if it felt like that with you too, but it definitely did with me.
Yeah, for me, I felt the same way when I read that it could take 18 months from when you fill out the questionnaire intake to delivery. I was like, wow, 18 months to make a baby. Oh my gosh. But like you said, the screening process was really smooth. I did the psych eval, the home visit, and everything went really quickly overall. So, what about your match meeting? How did that go?
Oh my gosh. So the first match meeting, Carla actually flew out to Sacramento. And she did the match meeting with me in person. I was so nervous. I was so nervous. It was over Skype. So it was in my living room, my husband, myself, and Carla. And we Skyped in the intended parents that we just had the baby for in September of 2016. Um, I had so many questions, and I told my husband, these are all my questions. I want everything answered. And then when it came down to it, and we just started talking, and it was so organic and natural that I got the questions answered, but it was much more seamless. And like I said, just an organic conversation that developed. So it's really interesting how Northwest Surrogacy Center, how they look through profiles and interview the intended parents and surrogates separately, and then they decide to match who they think would be a good fit, and they did such an amazing job.
Mhm.
And so that was my first match meeting. My second match meeting was almost the same. Katie, my case manager that we're working with now, it was a 3-way Skype, and again, it was just at home. Katie was in Portland, I was in Sacramento, and my new intended parents were on the East Coast. And so we all Skyped together. It lasted about an hour and a half, I'd say. And same thing. Everything developed organically, and it was just a no-brainer that we wanted to work with each other. Were yours on Skype too, or were they in person?
Actually, our match meeting was in person here at the San Francisco office. But yeah, we sat right here at the table, and it was like it happened, like conversations just started. And in fact, Erin Mays flew down from Portland, and she had to stop us. Wait, okay, let's officially start. Okay. So it was but it was fun. We got to meet them and know who they were, and it was really nice. And on the drive, as soon as we got in the car, I'm like, okay, can we email now to let them know that we want to work with them? And I'm like, well, let's sleep on it and give it a day. I'm like, well, I know. I mean, what do you think? So anyway, it was pretty, awesome. Northwest does a good job matching intended parents with surrogates. So, what about your IVF experience? How did that go?
So my first IVF experience, I've done 3 so far. My first one was, we went through a failed transfer with the first set of intended, or with my first surrogate baby. And so that was 6 weeks of injections and medication. It was very, we're trying to figure it out. We had never done injections on our own, meaning my husband and I. So it was all a learning experience. And so once we kind of figured out where to do the shots, it was trial and tribulation. But the first round, we got through it. The second round, after it being a failed transfer, the second round of IVF for the same intended parents that we had the successful transfer, and later being the birth, it was, I think it was a lot easier having the experience from the first one. And then now the third set of IVF, it's been a little bit more challenging. Even though you think that it would get easier with time, I don't know, it's just like they say with every pregnancy is different. And I feel like every IVF cycle is different. I've definitely gotten all the symptoms that come with the IVF medication. I got them all. So that's a little challenging. But again, it goes back to having a good support system to just help you through it. My husband, the first 2 rounds of IVF, he was doing all the injections for me. I now do it. And so I think for me personally, that's helped a lot. I'm just able to find the injection spot a lot easier. And I guess I can't get upset with him if it hurts. So what about you?
My IVF process was really great. Yeah, I had to do the small needle, but I had the option of having a suppository in lieu of the bigger needle injections because I was working with an IVF clinic on the East Coast. So that was a pleasant surprise. I mean, I was willing to do the injections, but if there's an alternative, great. So yeah, so my IVF experience was great. When I was out on the East Coast, the nurse showed me the spot to do the smaller injections. I'm like, okay, and we did a water one just to try it out. And I was a little nervous, but it was fine and it didn't even hurt. I'm like, okay, I can do this. So yeah, so when the medication came, then yeah, I knew what to do and I had all of the things. So how was your surrogacy pregnancy and how was it different than being pregnant with your own children?
So the surrogacy pregnancy versus my own, I knew in the very beginning that as excited I was to be pregnant, that in a way I needed to also distance myself. So with my own pregnancies with my husband and I's girls, he would constantly talk to my belly and always be playing music and rubbing it. And with my first surrogacy pregnancy, I actually had the dads, they made a recording. And so I got the little belly pods and I put it on my stomach every single night so that they could hear, the baby could hear the dad's voices. And I didn't really want my husband doing too much talking to my belly because that was something that I wanted reserved for our own kids. And yeah, so that was, I would say just being a little bit more offhand as far as my husband, touching and talking and things like that. Yeah. So what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting because they were very different. When I was pregnant with my own children, I was always wondering what they were going to look like and how they were going to be, their personalities. But with this pregnancy, I wasn't always wondering that because I knew that the pregnancy was from my 2 intended dads. So it was going to be their DNA. And so those thoughts never came into my mind. I was literally just the gestational surrogate, just the carrier for this baby. So, and my husband was never, he never talked with it. But as I got farther along in the pregnancy, my little 4-year-old started talking to say, Olivia, when are you going to be out?
Oh.
When are you coming? But it was really cute. It was really cute. But that's how it was different for me. What about your relationship with your intended parents during the pregnancy? What kind of communication, how often did you do that?
Yeah, so communication in the beginning with my first set of intended parents, I felt like they had a hard time developing that relationship because there wasn't there was nothing physically different with me. They got the ultrasound, and it was the first ultrasound that they had actually ever seen. And so they were kind of confused. And so I would say in the very beginning, it was very hands off. And then I had a conversation with them because I knew leading up to the birth and after the birth that I did still want to be involved in the baby's life. And that's what we had talked about during our match meeting. And they also felt the same way. And so I felt like I needed a little bit more. And so I had that conversation, and communication is so key in surrogacy. And so I sat down, we Skyped one night, and I let them know that I wanted a little bit more. So we set up weekly Skype meetings, and then we would text and talk, every couple of days. And it's almost the same thing with the new set of intended parents. We text almost every other day, and both sets were they're fantastic. They have sent me flowers just thanking me, and cards just reminding you that we're thinking of you, or just even little texts like in the morning, like every Thursday with my second surrogacy pregnancy, every Thursday it's a new week. So we're at on Thursday this last week, it was week number 9. And so sent a text message, oh, the baby's the size of a raspberry now. So it's just little things like that to remind each other that, we're in this for the long haul, but we want to develop a relationship after the baby's born. It's not just, you're not just our surrogate, but you will be in our life for, forever. So it's with the first, going back, after that hard conversation with the first set of intended parents, saying, that I needed a little bit more, they were very, very open to it, and they wanted that. They didn't want to step on my toes and or overstep their bounds. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Don't feel that way at all. So I would say it's fantastic, and we love talking. So a couple times a week. What about you?
Our relationship with our intended parents was great. We didn't talk as much as you did with yours, but I remember them coming to the very first appointments, and then after it was confirmed pregnancy, I think at week 6, I would get a weekly text from them saying, oh, we're at week 6, or yep. We're at week 7. And I remember thinking, oh no, but I was okay. It was just, I'm not a big texter, but I wanted them to stay in the loop, but it was great that they were like texting me all the time, and I would get flowers once in a while, and they would come to the big appointments, and some others also, but yeah, the relationship is great. And this wasn't their first surrogate. So they had another surrogate for their first child. So they had seen an ultrasound, and they had been to some of the appointments, but they wanted to have a local surrogate so they could come to more and be more involved. Oh. So it's really great. In fact, before I came to do this webinar, I stopped by to visit a little bit because they're just here in the area. So it was great. And I anticipate that it will continue that way. So yeah. What about, how was the birth, and how did that work with your intended parents?
Yeah, so the birth was amazing. I feel like it couldn't have gone any better than what I had, thought of for so many months leading up to, delivering her. They were both in the room. And so it was my husband, my mom, and then my intended fathers. And they were so excited. And so it was, it took, I think delivery was about 12 hours, and they were in there from, early in the morning until we delivered her. They never left, getting me ice chips and putting cold towels on my head. And one of the intended fathers cut the cord, and it was just such a magical moment as soon as I delivered her, being able to have the doctors, being able to see, the doctors hand them their baby girl. And it was immediate seeing them switch from, just a married couple to now a family. And so that was something that I will never forget, was just being able to see that and being so close. And then afterwards, after we delivered her, we were in the same room for about 4 or 5 hours. So we got to see them change their first diaper and the first bath, and, do the hearing test and all of that. And then the hospital that we delivered at only actually had 8 rooms. And so after the 5 hours, they had another room open up. And so they moved next door. And if they needed any breast milk or anything, I would pump, and then they would come and they would get the breast milk from me for the baby. And so it was never anything I hear all the time of, did you see the baby after you delivered her? Absolutely, I did. And that's exactly, it's not, you don't have the baby and then the baby gets whisked away and you never see her again. It definitely was not like that. And so, yeah, we slept, one room apart from each other, and they would come in at all hours of the night. I have no idea what to do with this baby. What should I do? And so, yeah, it was very comical, but it also meant a lot that they wanted me, in such close proximity. So what about you?
Yeah, so the birth was great. I checked in at about 1 in the afternoon and then delivered the baby girl at 11 p.m. So about 10 hours. And we had offered to have them in the room for the delivery, but they felt more comfortable just in the waiting room. So right after she was born, they came in, and the same thing. Yeah, we got to see her and they held her, and then they did all the weighing and everything that goes along with that. Yeah, and the hospital there was plenty of room. I was a smaller hospital in Los Gatos, and they had room for them to stay. And so just right next door. And there was an agreement that I actually breastfed her for like the first 24 hours, just to help me get my milk in, and then until she was discharged. So that worked out really well. So that they would just bring her over, and I would breastfeed, and then I would send her back over. They would do like skin to skin or whatever, and yeah, so it worked out really well. And yeah, and then I was discharged just the next day after, and yeah, so the hospital did a really good job just making sure we were all taken care of. Can you describe your current relationship with your intended parents now?
Yeah, so with both of them, I actually just flew back from seeing them. I celebrated her first birthday in September, and I was also very lucky to, in that same trip, to celebrate my surrogate baby's first birthday. I was able to also meet in person our new set of intended fathers. So it was kind of a huge whirlwind of a trip. But yeah, I stayed at their house, and it was, so with the first, going back with the first set of parents, we stayed at their house, and I got to babysit the little girl. And it was, so I would say we're very, very close. When they come to Sacramento, they watch our kids so that my husband and I can go out and have, date night, and then we have dinner together as a family. So it's been very nice. And I hope with the second set, it's that same thing. But during the visit in September, when I got to meet our second set of intended parents, they had us over to their home, and they made a wonderful brunch for us. And so it was nice to see them in their element. I'm hoping that we can kind of mirror the image of the first relationship that we were able to develop, not identically, because I know that's not possible. But we've been so lucky with who we've been matched with. So I would say overall, I love seeing them. I want to see them as much as I possibly can. And I hope that they would say the same about me. It sounds like you have a very open relationship with your intended parents too, obviously, if you just saw them.
Yeah. So just about, I think 2 or 3 weeks after delivery, my husband and 2 sons went up to visit. I was at a retreat, so I couldn't go up that soon, but they went up and made a delivery of milk, and got to hang out with Tyler and then the boys. But yeah, and then just now, we went up and there was Fleet Week in October, and they were, we invited them, or we stopped by before going out. So it's kind of like that. And we text now and then, and they send me pictures of her and how she's growing. So yeah, it's a really open relationship, and it feels good. So why did you choose to come back for a second surrogacy?
So going back to how it was in the delivery room, that moment of being able to see it, a married couple become a family, is exactly why. So leading up to the delivery of what would have been my third delivery, or what was my third delivery, I told my husband, I'm like, I'm 36 weeks pregnant, 37 weeks pregnant. I'm like, never let me do this again. I'm so miserable. I'm so huge. I'm like, I just want to be done being pregnant. Everyone, obviously, as you know, we go through that, the last couple weeks of pregnancy, but all of that went away. That moment that we gave, or the doctors handed the baby over. And so it wasn't, I swear it wasn't even like 2 weeks later that Carla got the phone call. She's calling to check in, and I go, I think I'm ready for number 2. And she's like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you're not even cleared from the doctors yet to exercise. But I knew. And so that's why we're here again. We have agreed that this is it. There's no more babies after, what is now my 4th pregnancy. But I'm ready to see that, magical moment take place in front of my eyes again. So yeah, we'll see. I'm sure it's going to be the same. It was just, I don't know if you can duplicate such a perfect moment though. I'm sure you can, and I'm sure we will, but it was just, it was so amazing to see, and to be firsthand. So yeah, that's, we'll go through all the wonderful trials and tribulations of the 3rd trimester again, just to see that moment.
Yeah. And what are you most looking forward to?
That moment. Yes. And seeing how, I guess that moment, and seeing how the relationship develops, because with my girls, they have, like I said, they have a very strong relationship with our intended parents and the baby. And so I'm hoping it's just, adding more people to our family. And so after the delivery, seeing if the same thing happens, but mainly that moment in the delivery room when they get their baby and their family is complete.
Mm-hmm. And what was the best thing about your surrogacy, or both of them, either of them?
So I had, of course, the birth would seem like the natural answer. But I went through some very, very hard, I should say our family went through a very hard personal time during the first surrogacy pregnancy. When I was 32 weeks pregnant, at the time she was 2 years old, my 2-year-old broke her femur, and she was in a half body cast for 6 weeks, got that taken off, and then put back in a full one-legged cast. And it was very hard. I had a lot of guilt because I couldn't pick up my own baby because she was 55 pounds with this, cast on. So my husband had to take all the time off of work, and it was a very challenging time. And as soon as the intended parents found out about it, they were, I think, the second call that I made after we got out of the emergency room with her. They told me, we're on the next flight. We want to help you out however we can. If that means, cleaning your house or making you dinner, we want to be there for you, because we don't want you, we want to make this as easy for you as possible. I thought that moment, knowing that I was more than just their surrogate, that was amazing. So having that bond, that relationship that developed, and it being as deep and personal as it was, I would say that that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hopefully nothing like that happened to you, but what
No.
about you?
Yeah, the best thing about the surrogacy, there were so many good things. In fact, when I had to fly out to the East Coast for just the initial process, the mother of one of the dads picked me up at the airport. And then his twin sister actually drove me to my appointment out on the East Coast. So I even got to meet their their family, their other family out on that in the East Coast. And it was just really great. I mean, knowing that all of these people who are loving them, who want this child to be brought into the world, just were surrounding me, and it just was so supportive. So that was unexpected, but it was really, really great. And then all throughout the pregnancy, I was I was having an open mind for the whole thing, but it just little things that they would do or texts they would send just made it so good. And I just felt so supported through the whole thing. So that was it. And then of course the birth, seeing her and seeing the attended dads and how they were now a family of 4. And it was really, really incredible. So how did Northwest Surrogacy support you and the intended parents?
They were amazing, absolutely amazing. From the ginger candies that I got at the confirmation of pregnancy to just whenever I had any questions, or as Carla knows, whenever I just wanted to call and just talk to her. The case managers and Northwest as a whole, but especially the case managers, they will spend any amount of time, do anything to help you, make you feel comfortable, make you feel supported. You are supported. But I would say just knowing that I could call anytime, not be put on hold, not say, oh, I'm going to send you to her voicemail and, she'll call you back. It was always just, I could pick up the phone, I could call, and I could have whatever length of conversation that I needed to have to get me through that day. If I was having a challenging day or having morning sickness or whatever it might be, they were always there. And then when it came to, either payments or anything like that, the business aspect of surrogacy, they were very quick to respond, always professional. No question was ever too weird or out there. So really just constantly being there for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the similar experience. Like you said, when it came to the business side of it, accounting was so quick to respond, and they were always there. If they couldn't answer it right then, they were like, oh, we got your question and we'll get back to you. And then they did. And it was really, really good. And they supported the intended parents as well. If there was a question that I didn't know or they didn't know, they would find out and they would get back to the intended parents as well. So what was the biggest surprise about the whole process of being a surrogate?
Oh my gosh. I would say developing the relationship that we developed, and it being a relationship that my whole family developed. I went into it thinking, afterwards, I had always wanted to have a relationship with the intended parents and the baby afterwards, but you never know. You never know if that's what the intended family wants to do too. And that's, why the match meeting is so important. But I would say the biggest surprise was that we developed their family now to us. So I would think that would be it.
Yeah. The biggest surprise for me was, after the birth. So I delivered healthy baby. And then afterwards, I kept passing out. So they, but they figured it out.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And I got what I needed. And then I was on my road to recovery, and it's been smooth sailing. So all of that was great. And another big surprise was that the IVF, the transfer didn't happen in Oregon. It was a different IVF center out on the East Coast. So that was another but pleasant surprise because I like flying. So there. So Sami, did you pump breast milk for your family? And how
I
did
did.
that work?
Yeah. So I pumped for 5 months, and it was, I wanted to pump. I know the importance of breast milk. It was important for me to have for my kids. And that was something in the match meeting that we had talked about, me wanting to do for my surrogate babies. And so I pumped after the first delivery, I pumped for 5 months. I would freeze all the breast milk in 5-ounce portions in the freezer bags. And then I would get a styrofoam cooler. You can get them on Amazon. I'd get styrofoam coolers and I would pack them full weekly, take them down to FedEx, and have them shipped overnight. Luckily, we never experienced any delays. FedEx was fantastic. All the milk got there frozen solid. They ended up stopping the breast milk at 5 months because they had so much of a surplus that they didn't need any. She was fine until she was about 8 months old. But I would say the downfall with that is if you're not local, which I wish that we were, because then she could have had breast milk, maybe a little bit longer, but it's very expensive to ship, especially from West Coast to East Coast overnight shipping. And those boxes are heavy. And so, yeah, I did it. I love doing it. And I plan to do it again.
Yeah, I pumped for my family as well for about 3 weeks. We weren't sure how long we were gonna pump, but or how long they were gonna need it or want it. So keeping an open mind about that. But they ended up wanting it for about 3 weeks, and same thing. It was kind of a challenge at the beginning to figure out how to do the shipping, but then once you did, then it was fine, and you just packed it with ice packs and in the styrofoam coolers, and then it was easy. So, and now we're going to take questions. So question number 2, did you experience a challenging moment, and how did the agency help you solve it?
I did experience a challenging moment. With the first set of intended parents, I was dilated at the end of the pregnancy, about 36 weeks, I was 2 centimeters dilated. And of course, I shared everything with my intended parents. And so as soon as I gave them that phone call, I'm 2 centimeters dilated, I kid you not, like 2 days later, they were here. And it was a little challenging because I felt awful knowing that they were going to be here for so long, being my 3rd pregnancy, my 3rd birth. I knew, I could walk around for weeks at 1 to 2 centimeters. And so I think having them here that early had put a little bit of extra pressure on me, because they live very, very busy lifestyles. And I knew that they had work obligations that they needed to tend to. And so you could, kind of feel the stress mounting from their work obligations needing to get completed. But also, and they were anxious to get back home. But here I am just sitting 36 and a half weeks pregnant, and I know there's nothing I can do. I'm walking as much as I can and eating some spicy food, but it's not time for the baby to come. So that was a little challenging. That added pressure, I would say, of having them here so early, thinking that the baby's going to come any minute. And I ended up delivering at 39 and a half weeks. So they were here for a while.
Yeah. For me, I think there wasn't really a challenging moment, but something that came up that wasn't in the contract at all, that I had a question about if it would be possible for me to have a doula. And so Erin went back and asked the guys what they thought about that, and they were okay with that. And so it made me feel much better knowing that I had that, even though it wasn't set up front. So that was really, really great. So question number 3, what should an intended parent do to make your relationship successful?
No, like I said, communication is key. This is a relationship you develop it, and you are forced to develop it very quickly. Even though I'm sure as an intended parent, it feels like forever because you're waiting for your bundle of joy at the finish line. but it is, you're being forced to create such an intimate relationship, and you have to do it so quickly that the only way to do that and do it successfully is to be completely open. So communication, like I said, is key. I had to have that conversation with the first set of intended parents, early on, within the first trimester. And I would say after that, it was very successful. So any questions that you have, nothing is too outlandish, but just be completely open and honest on what you're feeling, what you expect. And I would say that's a recipe for a very successful relationship.
Yeah, I would have to agree that communication is key. Texting, calling, email, just being able to make sure that both parties can be able to communicate openly. I would say that's the best thing that the intended parents could do to make it a success. What about, were the shots painful or hard to do?
So the shots, yeah. Yes. So Lupron, which is this small injection, on your belly, that's fine. That's a piece of cake. Half the time I couldn't feel it. The estrogen and the progesterone shots, those are 23.5 gauge needles. So they're a little bit bigger. It's an intermuscular shot. So the needle's fairly thick and long. The first round of IVF, it was awful. I didn't know any tricks. So I'd take the medication, which is in oil, as you know. So the progesterone or estrogen, it's in oil, so it's very, very thick. So I would just take it out of the box. I would put it in the syringe, and, we'd do our best to get, about where it's supposed to go. And then just go on about my evening. And I very quickly developed large lumps, and then having to do on Mondays and Fridays, you have to do double injections. So you can't skip one side. You have to do it on both sides. So you're injecting into the lump because that's the right location to do it. So that was painful. Once we learned the tips and tricks of warming up the oil first and making sure that you massage it after you did the injections, heating pads were my best friend on the injection sites, then it became easier. I do the injections now, and I have about 3 more weeks of injections. I don't feel them anymore. So that, thank goodness. But with the first round, it was very painful, and I had those awful awful, lumps. So I hope that you didn't experience that, because that was not fun.
Yeah. So the Lupron, like you said, the little injections in the front, in the tummy, those are easy. Those are really small. And then for the estrogen and the progesterone, those that you took in the big needle, I got to take as an oral and also a suppository. So I had to do it once in the morning and once at night, but that was nothing. So hearing all of the experiences of everybody else who had to do the shots, I'm like, oh man, I wish they had that option.
I feel like once you learn how to do it, it's great.
Yes.
Or not great, but it's bearable. Mm-hmm. But yeah, learning I think that's the challenging part.
Right. And that's just trial and error. Yep. You have to just experience that. So this is the last question. There's one more question. How long after you were matched did you have a transfer? And what tests did you have before the transfer?
What test?
Like, how long after you were matched did you have the transfer?
Okay. So we were matched in May. This is talking most recently. So May of 2017, and I just had my transfer middle of October. I feel like it went very quickly. Again, so after we were matched, we had some, legal stuff to take care of. So it's not like you're ever just at a lull. You're still in the surrogacy process, getting everything in order. And then you have your 6 weeks of injections leading up to the transfer date. So beginning of September is when things really kind of kicked off, and that's when we started injections. And then middle of October is when the transfer date actually was.
Okay. Yeah. Our meeting was August 4th. And then the transfer was early, just right after New Year's. So it could have happened a month earlier, but it was conflicting with other things. So
Oh.
we just postponed it just 1 month, and then so from August to January. So not too bad, not too long, and it went pretty quick. Question, here's another question. How has your family been affected by surrogacy, and what did you tell your kids?
I would say with my kids, it's hilarious because we get stopped, like with the first surrogate baby, we would get stopped at Target, and strangers just feel like they need to know everything about what's going on in a pregnant woman's life. And so they asked my daughter, oh, are you excited to be a sister? And she goes, that's not our baby. And it was, just so, blunt and honest and no filter. They really haven't, either one of my girls really haven't been affected negatively. Definitely not. If they've been affected at all, it's been 100% positive. I'm teaching them what a selfless act looks like. I'm teaching them to put in situations other people before themselves. And I feel like that's extremely important nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've been affected by, I would say, lifelong lessons.
Yeah, mine as well. Yeah, other people, of course, they don't run into a gestational surrogate often. I get a lot of questions, but my children, my 7-year-old or 6-year-old then was able to understand everything going on, that we weren't going to be keeping this baby. But my 4-year-old, when he first realized, oh, this baby isn't coming home with us, was a little upset. But then after, he understood after a couple of times, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is going to go to the other family. And then he was fine, and he would talk to the baby all the time. Other people would ask, and it would be, I would say they were affected positively by this experience. So here's another question. What makes a good surrogate, and what would you tell a potential surrogate starting the process?
You need to be honest. And I feel like there's a lot of a surrogate's image. Some people think of it very negatively. I belong to a group of, a surrogate group on Facebook. I'm no longer on Facebook. But when I was on Facebook, that they talked about that they labeled themselves a career surrogate. They wanted to be a surrogate just for the money. And honestly, that never, ever, ever, ever crossed my mind to do it for the money. That's not what it's about. If you also need to be honest and completely open with the set of intended parents that you are subject to work with. Don't make yourself out to be somebody that you're not, because like I said, this is a very personal relationship that you're forced to develop very quickly. And if you're in a hurry to become a surrogate and you just want to say what appeases the intended parents, then it's just not a good situation for anyone. So you need to be completely open and honest and realize that it's not just for the money, because in the long run, it's really not that much.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. For a good surrogate is open and honest and is themselves throughout the whole process from beginning to end, so that everybody has everything on the table that they can make the most informed choice that they can. And I would tell a potential surrogate starting the process that, Northwest does a great job at the whole process, streamlining it, so you never have to wonder. And like you said, don't be in a hurry, because if it's the right match, it's going to be the right match, and you want to make sure, because then you'll have the best outcome from the whole process. So Now we're going to hand it over back to Carla and Mariah.
Thank you, Sami and Jen, for all of that information and being so open and honest with all of us about your experiences. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for signing on today and learning with us. If you want to get more information from us and you've already been in touch, please contact either your surrogate coordinator if you're a potential surrogate, or our executive assistant if you're our potential intended parent.
And if you haven't had a chance to speak with us yet, you can go to our website at www.nwsurrogacycenter.com, and you can submit an intake form with us there. And we're really looking forward to connecting with you. And thank you so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.